we are. Welcome everyone to this online service of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax on Easter Sunday. My name is Norm Horofker and I'm the proud minister of this loving congregation. Jessica Friesen is our music director. Marie-Claude Leroux is our director of religious exploration. John Piccolo is our volunteer technician for these services. And all the other members of the congregation and our two special guests this morning who will be participating in this service today, I say thank you all. Thank you very much. Before the service begins, I have just a few announcements. As always, I encourage you to watch for notices on UU Info. That's our main church mailing list. And unfortunately, most activities are still online at the present time, and that's where you find out what's happening. And please stay in touch this time when we're isolated from one another. One way to do that is every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. we're hosting an online gathering to allow us to break out of our isolation. So join Thursdays if you can on Thursday evening. Watch again for announcements on UU Info on how to do that. We have enabled chat in the service today, but it provides us with, we would like you to use it to provide us with feedback if you have something you want to add, but it's primarily there this morning to help those who are in the service and part of the service to communicate with each other if there are any issues. If you can go to chat and you would like to leave your email address so that you can be added to our mailing list, then by all means do that. And this morning we're live streaming our service for the first time over YouTube. Instructions for watching the service live or watching previously recovered services will be sent out over UU Info. Okay, now over to Jessica for our gathering music.
Hello everyone, it's a beautiful day outside once again. It seems like every Sunday has been beautiful. We are going to sing the in-gathering song that we've been doing for April, Everything is Changing by Rory Skelly, introduced to us by Wendy Luella Perkins. So please sing along, and here it goes. Everything is changing, always rearranging. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. Everything is changing, everything is changing, always rearranging, always rearranging. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. Everything is changing, always rearranging. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. If we were in church, we would do this as a round, so let's try it. Everything is changing, always rearranging. Everything is changing, always rearranging. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. Think about the words as you sing it. Everything is changing, always rearranging. Everything is changing, nothing stays the same. Thank you, everyone. Back to Norm.
So on behalf of the board of this entire congregation, I want to thank all of you who are continuing to generously support the work of our church. I have the following message from our treasurer. In this difficult time, when we're unable to meet in person, we appreciate your ongoing help and generosity in the weeks and the months ahead. Our focus right now is to continue to pay staff salaries, to keep the food box stocked, to provide financial aid to people impacted by COVID-19 through the Minister's Discretionary Fund, and to continue to provide a Saturday brunch in a takeout form. If you'd like to assist with this, please email our treasurer at treasurer@uuch.ca for information on how to set up an automatic monthly withdrawal or how to send an e-transfer. And if you wish to send a check, use the church address. This message with gratitude from your treasurer. And now, I want to acknowledge that we are on Mi'kmaq territory this morning. Most of us here in Nova Scotia, at least, are on Mi'kmaq territory. And we acknowledge that a great injustice has been done to the Indigenous people of this land. In the midst of the COVID-19 crisis, we cannot lose sight of the work of truth and reconciliation. This congregation has undertaken a reflection program on the history of our relationship with the Indigenous peoples of Mi'kmaq, and there is currently a movie screening and discussion group underway. We need to find new ways to build our relationship with the Indigenous peoples of this land. And if you'd like to be part of that, please contact me. And now, it's my great pleasure to introduce the Reverend Patricia Guthman Haresch, a colleague and a friend, and the minister of the First Unitarian Congregation of Ottawa, where she's been serving as developmental minister since the fall of 2018. Ministry is Pat's second career, following her work as a paralegal and supervisor in complex legal litigation in the United States. Reverend Pat has served as minister for congregations in New Hampshire and North Carolina, and as a consultant for a congregation renewing religious education for all ages in Virginia. A few years ago, her spouse John signed on with the U.S. State Department, which has brought their family to the Philippines, where she had an active role with the local UU congregation and the national organization, and then Colombia, and now to Canada. I'm delighted that Pat has accepted my invitation to speak to us in Halifax. This online format provides an opportunity to get to know UU congregations and ministers from across the country. So take it away, Pat.
Good morning, everyone in Halifax. Oh, I hear my son in the background. I hope that you do not. Thank you so much, Norm. I'm so happy to be with all of you. I had hoped I'd be coming and learning ukulele with you, and I'm so sad not to have that opportunity. Maybe next year or something, and hopefully in May, I'll see you on the Zoom with all the congregations in Canada, right? And Norm was a little disappointed, I think, that I wasn't going to be Zooming to you from our beautiful sanctuary at First Ottawa. I am in my dining room, which has become First Ottawa's sanctuary, except when we play music, that's in the music room of my music director. And this is also a virtual classroom, a conference room in my office. So welcome to our sanctuary. Also, Norm had asked, what are the kind of things that you find your congregation is doing during this time, right? This odd time that we're in. One of the first things we started was a telephone tree, and an old-fashioned telephone tree divided up by neighborhoods. We have 25 people calling 300-some people, and it's been a beautiful, beautiful connection. We have a few people delivering groceries and running errands for others. And like you, we have a Sunday service. We record the Sunday service, and then we have a virtual coffee hour following that. I don't know about you all, but we have found in many ways we're drawing closer to each other in these times. We're Zooming like crazy. Every meeting, everything is now, as much as we can, on Zoom. So really odd times. I'm telling my people, there was before the pandemic, which feels like ages ago, right? And then for us in Ottawa, it was Friday the 13th, Friday, March 13th, everything changed when we learned of our first COVID cases in Ottawa. We closed down the church building, and now everything is pandemic, right? All pandemic all the time. This odd, kind of like a staycation, kind of not. And we're waiting. We're waiting for when there'll be some sort of transition. Who knows when and who knows how long. Waiting for whatever that time is again that feels like equilibrium, yes, that new normal, whatever that new normal will be. I'm going to share with you what I was thinking about last week. Last week, our service was about creating home. And I was thinking a lot about Passover, that Passover was coming, Passover is here, and thinking about the idea that the home that we're all in, sanctuary of First Ottawa here, this home that we're all in the Jewish context, we think of our homes as little sanctuaries. So how during this time might we make our home a little sanctuary? If you know anything about the Passover Seder, it's like a mini service acted out with songs and ritual food and stories from the Bible and children looking for matzah, right? And if you think about it, way back when, several times the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem, and several times the Jewish people had to scatter all over the world. Oftentimes they were persecuted, their practices outlawed, that find themselves in another location without a temple, without a synagogue. So their homes were their sanctuaries. And if you think about all the traditions that are so important in the home, Passover and every Friday night, Shabbat, and lighting the candles. Sometimes everything was happening in their homes, studying the Torah. Jewish author Anita Demont says this little sanctuary is not just a museum for vestigial rituals and ceremonies. It's a place where human needs are expressed and met, and should be a place of peace and hospitality and beauty. If you're like me and the whole family is together, it can be stressful, but how do we make a special place in this really profound time, right? Maybe a candlelit dinner once a night, even if you're alone. I remember when I lived alone, sometimes I'd have a candlelit dinner just by myself and a big bottle of wine, right? Our DRE had a lesson for us in one of our weekly newsletters about making our own chalices. So I've encouraged everybody to make their own chalice and have a chalice at home. Bring your chalice when you have the Sunday service right next to you by your laptop or your device. Bring your chalice to every dinner and light it and share your joys, your sorrows, your concerns, your hopes. I've heard about neighbors who are putting things in their windows for each other, a candle at night or things in the window for people to read. Have a scavenger hunt with the kids and see which windows they can find and what clues. I've heard of neighbors who are at a set time, they come out and they make noise together, or they come out and they dance a little jig together. And what's very odd is we're meeting more neighbors as we're walking as much as we can to get out of these four walls. But let's call each other and Zoom each other, make sure that we're feeling connected and not closed up in our little four walls, but bring out the love, bring out the peace, right? Let's all maybe cultivate a sense of this little sanctuary and do all those things. Last week when I ended the service, and I'll end with you. Oh, I hear the restless natives. Okay. Last week, what I shared at the end of the Sunday service was a poem from William Stafford called "You Reading, Be Ready." And I think of every place we are is sacred ground. Every place we are, whether it's outside or in our four walls. And this is what he shares. Starting here, what do you remember? What do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor. What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry? Wherever you go right now, are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now? Starting here, right in this room, when you turn around. May it be so. Very good to be with you. Norm?
Thank you, Pat. I want to thank you for your participating in the service in this way. Your talk about your mentioning of house and home is significant, and it's going to recur in our service. So that's a little bit of serendipity. We sincerely hope that you'll be able to be here in person with the CUC conference Making Waves in 2020. Thank you again, Pat. And now to Jessica for the prelude.
Hello, everyone. I decided to do a piece called Let Go by Dwayne Woods, I believe. Yes, Dwayne Wood. This is a song of let love come into your heart, and let's just let go of all the stress. Let's let go of the anxiety, everything that we're bottling up within these four walls. Some of us are in big houses, some of us are in tiny apartments. Feed your soul with love, with creativity, and sing together. Seem to fall asleep. There was so much on my mind, searching for that peace I could not find. So then I kneeled down to pray, and praying, help me please. Then he said, you don't have to cry, 'cause I'll supply all your needs. Oh, as soon as I stop worrying how the story ends, I let go and I let love take over, and let love have its way. Then what things start happening, I'll start looking back then. I'll let go and I'll let love have its way. Oh, there's so much going on. Sometimes I can't find my way, and oftentimes I struggle from every day. Oh, I have to realize that it's not my battle. It's not my battle to fight. I have to know if to put it hands in his hands, everything will be right. Soon as I stop worrying about the story ends, I let go and I let love have its way. That's when things start happening. I'll stop looking at back then. I'll let go and I'll let love have its way. have its way. My brother, let go and let love. My sister, you can't handle it. So let love, oh, let go, and let love have its way. Thank you, everyone. Now we go to Heather and Eddie for the chalice reading.
Hello, I'm Heather, and this is Eddie, and Eddie is going to say a few words before Norm lights the chalice.
For holy days on which we recall the old stories, we light the flame. For Passover, which reminds us of the courage and strength of those seeking freedom in the past, we light the flame. For Easter, which reminds us that love is our greatest challenge, we light the flame. For gathering today in this sacred space, we light the flame. For the opportunity to be together as a community, to remember the past, to plan for our future, to be alive in our present, we light the flame. Back to you, Norm.
As a reminding all and lighting this chalice for the time when we'll return here before long, hopefully, be together again in this space. And if you have a chalice at home, I hope you're lighting it with us. And now, over to Marie-Claude.
Good morning, everyone. This morning I'm going to be sharing the Unitarian Universalist story of Easter. It's adapted from a story shared at the Bucksmont Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. So at the time of the story that I'm telling, almost 2,000 years ago, in the early springtime, many Jewish people would go once a year to a city called Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. Passover celebrates the story of how the Jewish people escaped from captivity in the land of Egypt. And that story was thousands of years old, even before this story begins. In the year when this story happened, there was someone going to Jerusalem who said such amazing things and did such wonderful things that people followed him wherever he went. His name was Jesus, and we remember and honor him as a great storyteller and teacher. Jesus was going to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. As he traveled to Jerusalem, he was followed by his disciples, and these were friends of his who listened to him and watched him preach every day. Jesus taught that we should take care of the sick and poor, that we should forgive people who hurt us. He told exciting new stories that helped people think about things in a different way. Everyone would come to see and hear him speak. In his lifetime, he influenced many people to love one another. Even little children wanted to see and hear Jesus. When Jesus reached Jerusalem, he went to celebrate Passover with his 12 friends, these friends called his disciples. They had a Passover meal together, and that particular Passover meal Jesus held was known as the Last Supper, because sadly, Jesus died soon afterwards. Jesus was killed because some very powerful people didn't like how so many other people paid attention to him, how so many other people listened to him instead of the powerful people. When he died, Jesus' friends were very sad because they loved and missed him very much. Some of them believed that Jesus' message, his love, and his stories were so strong that he came back to life again. In fact, the belief that Jesus rose from the dead and rose up higher and higher to the heavens began the religion known as Christianity. So, the story of Jesus' last few days on earth, his death and his coming back to life, takes place at this time of year, in the spring. In the spring, when the earth is coming back to life after what seems like dying in the winter. The trees get new leaves, flowers bloom, the air warms, and birds lay their eggs. Easter eggs, like the eggs on Passover or eggs at Astera, remind us of this, that although all living things die, all dead things return to the earth to nourish new life. Whatever the truth is about what happened after Jesus died, one thing we know for sure is that, like everyone who was loved, Jesus did live on in people's minds and hearts. He was never forgotten. People remembered Jesus' stories and all the things he did to help others. They wrote down everything they could remember about him in a book called the New Testament. The story they wrote about Jesus reminds us that there is much love and wisdom and hope in the world, even when we have sad times, bad times, times when all seems lost. If we hunt for it, a bit like hunting for colored Easter eggs, we just might find the joy that we're looking for. Thank you for listening to the story. I invite the children to draw during the service something that represents what Easter means to them, and to share it with us during our virtual coffee hour. And now Jessica will lead us into the opening hymn.
So we'll be doing number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. I invite you to sing at home. Lo, the earth awakes again, Alleluia, from the winter's bond and pain, Alleluia. Bring we faith in flower spring, Alleluia, to adorn this happy day, Alleluia. Once again the words come true, Alleluia. All the earth shall be made new, Alleluia. Now the dark cold days are o'er, Alleluia. Spring and gladness are before, Alleluia. Change then mourning into praise, Alleluia. And for dirges anthem raised, Alleluia. Now our spirits soar and sing, Alleluia. How our hearts leap with the spring, Alleluia. Thank you very much. Back to Norm.
Okay, so this is a time of meditation in our service. So I have a story for you that is worth meditating over. It's a humorous and profound at the same time. And you may well have heard it before, but it deserves to be retold. The picture on the cover of the order of service today that was sent out digitally is of Hosea Ballou, one of the founders of Universalism in North America, along with John Murray. It was his preaching, heard by Nova Scotians who traveled to the Boston area, that led to the founding of this church in Halifax. And his picture actually hangs in the hallway in our church. Our church was founded, as you know, in 1837, and Hosea Ballou was an active preacher until his death in 1852 at the age of 81. So here's the story for your meditation. Hosea Ballou was in his younger days a circuit rider, spending long hours on horsebacks, traveling from town to town to preach the Universalist gospel. And one day he was riding with a Baptist circuit rider who happened to be headed in the same direction. And the two passed the time in friendly theological debate, something ministers do. The Baptist was flabbergasted to learn that Universalists didn't believe in a God who would condemn people to eternal hellfire. Why, if you were a Universalist, the Baptist said, I could knock you over the head and ride off with your money and your horse and have nothing to worry about. If you were a Universalist, said Ballou, that thought would never occur to you. Later today, I encourage you to think about that. So we take a special time now to reflect on our joys and our sorrows. It's a sacred time in our service. It's a time set apart to honor the many sorrows and the many joys that you, the congregation, are living, and to acknowledge the mutual support of our community. Today, I'll light 2 candles, representing, first of all of those here with us or in our hearts and thoughts who are struggling, mentally, physically, financially, or emotionally. And in this time, that number is much greater than it has been in the past. And I'll also light a candle for all the joys that are here this morning, the big joys that come along only infrequently, and the little joys that we are blessed with by every day, if we're able to see them. Earlier this week, I invited anyone with a joy or a sorrow to share at this time, to relay their thoughts to me via email. And I received this note from Amy Moonshadow. Mary McIntosh of Annapolis Royal, the 82-year-old mother of Amy Moonshadow, slipped in her home and fractured her hip. She's taking enough painkillers that she's comfortable at Valley Regional Hospital awaiting surgery. Please pray that everything will work itself out for Mary's recovery and ongoing home care needs in her home. Her last chemotherapy has been postponed indefinitely due to the cancer clinic at VG being under quarantine. I thank everyone for their thoughts, care, and concern. That from Amy Moonshadow. I also have brief updates on a couple of members of the congregation. Glenda Butt is still at home battling viral pneumonia, and I told her this morning that we would be lighting a candle for her. And I also spoke with Allison Chipman, and I told her we'd be lighting a calendar. She's in Ward 5A at the VG Hospital. She's now been placed on a waiting list for a nursing home. She has received and enjoyed many kind cards from members of the congregation. So later, when we stop live streaming on YouTube and before the coffee hour begins, I'll invite anyone else who would like to share a joy or a sorrow, if they would like to do so at that time. Now over to Jessica for the reflective hymn.
Reflective hymn, 344. There we go. A promise through the ages rings. A promise through the ages ring, that always, always something sings, not just in May, in finch-filled flower, but in December's coldest hour. A note of hope sustains us all, entombed within our deep despair. That pain seems more than we can bear, but days shall pass, and nature knows that deep beneath the winter snow, a rose lies covered and hums its song. For something always, always sings. This is the message Easter brings. From deep despair and perished things, a green shoot always, always springs. And something always, always sings. Thank you.
May the joys and sorrows, both those acknowledged here this morning and those held in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, weave us together in the interdependent fabric of community. Now, over to Katherine Hutka for the reading. Thank you, Katherine.
Okay. So I found this reading, and I thought it had some things that were very relevant to us all these days. Okay, so it's called Easter Again, and it's been by Linda Susan Ulrich. We live inside a paradox. Humans generally don't like to admit it. We prefer tidy, stable, comprehensible, logical ways of getting through the day. But paradox is woven into the fabric of this particular universe that we inhabit. Light is both a particle and a wave. Imaginary numbers describe the math of physical phenomena. Love and grief are inextricably linked, as are rage and sorrow, suffering and compassion, life and death. Time itself is both linear and cyclical. Each person's life traces a single arc, yet patterns emerge and reemerge. Fear always seems to return. Goodness knows terror always finds its way back into the news. We always seem in need of help to roll back big stones that block our way. Yet we also come back to the Alleluia, even if its absence has gone on far longer than the 40 days of Lent. We raise each other's spirits when our sacred places seem empty. We anoint each other. We engage in a demanding faith that asks us to love the next world into being today. We are joyful, though we have considered all of the facts. We practice resurrection. It is Easter, my friends, and you are surrounded by a multitude who wish you well.
Okay, hello. Now that I have things organized, now I will introduce Emmanuel Solomon. We are very lucky to have him. We've been trying to get him to sing and it hasn't worked out due to school, but he is a voice major at Dalhousie University and he will introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be part of your service this morning. It's such a privilege and to sing for you. Well, without much ado, I will be singing for you "Bless This House" by May Hay, and I do hope that this song ministers to each and every one of you and give you peace and comfort in this unprecedented time of global uncertainty. Yeah, I will be singing "Bless This House," and may the Lord bless you. Bless this house, O Lord, we pray. Make it safe by night and day. Bless these walls so firm and stout, keeping want and trouble out. Bless the roof and chimneys tall. Let thy peace lie over all. Bless this door that it may prove ever open to joy and love. Bless these windows shining bright, letting in God's heavenly light. Bless the hearth ablazing there with smoke ascending like a prayer. Bless the people here within. Keep them pure and free from sin. Bless us all that we may be fit, O Lord, to dwell with thee. Bless us all that one day we may dwell, O Lord, with thee.
Thank you, Emmanuel. That was glorious and so joyful. We could hear the joy in your voice. You have such a gift, and thank you for sharing with us today. And the theme of Bless This House, as we're all living in our homes, maybe more than we would normally be doing so. Thank you so much. Okay, so it's Easter Sunday, and in UU churches across the continent, sermons will focus on spring, the rebirth of life following winter, the cycle of life, bunny rabbits, and Easter eggs. Although the roots of our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition are deep in Christian soil, we frequently, and for various reasons, cut ourselves off from our own roots. Like rebellious teenagers, we think our parents are just not cool, maybe even an embarrassment. While the younger couple down the street are fascinating, and they can do no wrong. In most UU churches, I venture to say a liberal Muslim, a liberal Hindu, Buddhist, Sikh, Jew, or pagan, or atheist are all welcome. But a liberal Christian, maybe not so much. You see, most of us think that we know a lot about Christianity, just as the teenager knows a lot about their parents. But the other religious traditions are new and cool, mysterious in some way, and worthy of our interest and respect. I suppose that I had some of that attitude when I entered seminary in my late 50s to study to become a Unitarian Universalist minister. For practical reasons of travel and expense, I enrolled at the Liberal Christian Seminary, approved by the UU powers that be, the Candler School of Theology in Atlanta, Georgia. I would take extension courses at the Unitarian Seminary, Star King, in Berkeley, California, to ensure that my training was complete. You will, I hope, forgive me if you've heard me tell this story before. I was nervous about attending a Christian school. I know what Christians believed, and I expected some interactions would be uncomfortable for me, to say the least. In my first semester, I took a course from the renowned theologian Luke Timothy Johnson, a man who had been a Benedictine monk for 9 years and was now a noted Catholic scholar. In his teaching style, he regularly allowed questions during his lectures. And one day, in an introductory course on the New Testament, he abruptly stopped. And I can still remember clearly his words. "You people are not understanding what I'm telling you about the story of Easter. I don't believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus." I could hear books closing. I could sense the astonishment in the room. What? Luke Timothy Johnson doesn't believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus? He went on to say that resurrection would really be a resuscitation, and that happens in our hospitals all the time. He said, "We'll never know exactly what happened when Jesus was crucified, but whatever it was, it had a powerful effect on the people who knew him best. And that event changed the history of the world." That made me feel a lot more comfortable. We'll never know what happened, and I'm not interested in debating that subject. As Katherine read to us this morning, we live inside paradox. Humans generally don't like to admit it. We much prefer tidy, stable, comprehensible, logical ways of getting through the day. But paradox is woven into the fabric of this particular universe that we inhabit. We'll never know what really happened when Jesus died, but I know what happened to me when someone I loved dearly died. My father, known to everyone as Willie Hurofker, died in 1995. And you know, I still talk to him. Yes, confession here, your minister talks to the dead. You know, and I think that's not uncommon. What I mean is that when I do something out of the ordinary, be it something good or something not so good, I often find myself addressing my father. "Well, Dad, what did you think of that? What would you have done in this situation? Did I do good?" And when I talk to my dad this way, it's as if he was with me and his death was not final. It's like that, but not that. Paradox woven into our lives. I don't know how many of you ever do this. I may be in a tiny minority, but I'm sure that I'm not alone. We'll never know what happens when Jesus died, but I strongly suspect that many who knew this great, brave, inspiring leader kept him alive in a similar way. This church, the UU Church of Halifax, was founded as a Universalist church in 1837. Paradox is woven into the fabric of this particular universe we inhabit. Easter, the celebration of the renewed life, is tied somehow to a vision of hell and eternal damnation. Universalists taught that a Christian God, the God of our faith, was a loving God. They taught that the God of our understanding would never condemn any human being to eternal damnation. And they did so at the risk of social ostracization, when the majority of people in Halifax were believers in hellfire and damnation. And the majority of believers that the whole reason behind Christ's crucifixion was a grand plan to save believers from eternal hellfires. We belong to a marvelous, evolving faith tradition. Hosea Ballou, George de Benville, John Murray, they were all raised in strict Calvinist families, but they rejected those ideas, and they went on to create modern universalism based on a God of love. But they also saw themselves as Christians and believed in the divine nature of Christ and that his death had saved us all, ensuring that we would be united with God after our death. The idea of universalism, that we're all ultimately saved, was a common belief in the early Christian church. It was so widespread that there was a council called in 543 of the Common Era, the Council of Constantinople. And there, the idea of universalism was declared an anathema. The Christian church, prior to the Reformation, which came 1,000 years later, had the power to enforce those strict doctrines. Unitarian Universalists have taken another unique path, one that is still leading us on into uncharted territory. The early Universalists took great delight in debating with more Orthodox Christians. The Universalists were convinced that their doctrine of salvation was correct, and they loved to debate. They held on to strict beliefs about the divine nature of Jesus and his special role in the salvation of all people. Hosea Ballou himself would die fighting the new, developing, even more liberal interpretation of universalism that had more concern about issues of social justice and little or no interest in theological debates. Today, we are a church that takes pride in the fact that we have no creed or dogma. There is no and shall be no test of faith in our churches. We're not interested in theological debates about the nature of God or Jesus, for that matter. Debates imply an attempt to win an argument, an attempt to convince someone else that you are right and they are wrong. In my interpretation of Unitarian Universalism, we not only tolerate theological diversity, we celebrate it. But we live in a universe of paradox. The Universalists believe that we will all be united with God after death, and that leads directly to our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. If no one is being condemned to hell, then in the big picture, we all must have inherent worth and dignity. We have no creed or dogma, but a belief in hell seems to me to be contrary to what it means to be a UU, because we would have to deny a person's inherent worth and dignity to imagine them condemned to hell for eternity. This Easter, my hope is that our congregation will live into this vision of theological diversity, that we'll welcome into our midst people of all faiths and none, and that Christians who believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus will be welcomed and will feel acknowledged and supported as much as those who are atheist, pagan, Buddhist, humanist, or none of the above. We're not here for theological debate. Those days are behind us. We're here to help one another, to bring more love and justice into the world, and that's my message for you this Easter. And now I'll turn it over to Jessica for our interlude.
Thank you, Norm. For the interlude, I have chosen the song Up on the Roof, originally by the Drifters. Many of you may know it from James Taylor, and it's written by Carole King and Rodney Henson. Got to get all of the names in there. It's very important. The composers, musicians, singers. I just want to read a line of Up on the Roof. When this old world starts a-getting me down and people are just too much for me to face, I'll climb way up to the top of the stairs and all my cares just drift right into space. On the roof, it's peaceful as it can be. So I want you to imagine your place, that you feel peaceful. And I know we're isolated and we don't have to get away from people, but we all have that special spot. We all have that place in our heart, that physical place where there's peace. And I encourage you to sing along. this old world starts to get me down, and people are just too much for me to face, I'll climb way up to the top of the stairs, and all my cares just drift right into space. On the roof, as peaceful as it can be, and there the world below don't bother me, no. So when I come home feeling tired and beat, I'll go up where the air is fresh and sweet. I'll get far away from the hustling crowd and all the rat race noise down in the street. On the roof, that's where I wanna be, where you just have to win to make it so. Let's go up on the roof. And at night the stars, they put on a show for free. And darling, you can share it all with me. That's what I said, oh, right smack dab in the middle of town. I found a paradise that's trouble-proof. And if this old world starts to getting you down, there's room enough for two or you up on the roof. Up on the roof, up on the roof.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, this must be one of the strangest Easter weekends ever. I hope and trust we'll all remember, and that this pandemic will be a curious memory when we celebrate Easter season again next year. In the meantime, I know we can all stay calm and carry on. And with that theme, Jessica, give us some hope that we can carry on for the closing hymn, number 1015.
I know I can. That's the title if you don't know. Though days be dark with storm and burden weigh my heart, through trouble wait I know. I know, I know, I can go on. One more time. Let me hear you. Oh, I know, I can go on. Good job, everyone. Back to Norm.
So I think we're going to Troy and Destiny for extinguishing the chalice now.
Hi, everyone. Destiny, our lovely daughter, is going to read the chalice closing words today. Go ahead, Destiny. The words I think are going to come up here in a sec.
You who have an eye for miracles, regard the bud now appearing on the bar branch of the fragile young tree. It is mere dot a nothing, but already it's a flower, already a fruit, already its own death and restoration.
Thank you, Destiny. And now I extinguish the chalice in our sanctuary until this time next week.